The question that is on every horror fan's mind this weekend is, do you want to take the substance? Hello Flickering Myth family, and welcome to our channel. My name is EJ, and we have quite the movie to talk about today. There is a new horror event creeping into theaters over the next couple weeks. I am so excited to talk about this new film. We are looking at The Substance. Over the last year, we've had quite a few experiences with the horror genre. There's been a plethora of different, entries that have intrigued us. There's been new age slasher films, religious films. There's been the upcoming Terrifier that we're all waiting for. But this movie is quite interesting because it really brings me back to good old body horror. I'm talking Brian Yuzna. I'm talking David Cronenberg. I'm talking even a little bit of David Lynch. Sometimes he got gross with the body and with the mind and all that. That's what this movie really reminds me of. But I love a good, gross horror film. I come from the French New Wave extreme movement. I'm talking Inside, Martyrs, Frontiers. There are so many of these movies that are just gory, but there's still a bit of substance, no pun intended. That's what this movie is. While I think The Substance suffers from a few issues that we'll talk about in a moment, overall, I quite enjoyed this movie. We have Coralie, Fargeat, I believe her name is. She is a French filmmaker that stormed us with the movie Revenge. Do you remember that revenge film that was so intense and so different for the genre? So she's back with a new film, and it just feels like a good experience for her. She's playing in this gory, this crazy realm that she experienced with Revenge, but she's now adding a bit of a sci-fi flair, a satirical flair. This movie has a lot going for it, and that's what makes it so strong, but also that's what makes it a bit chaotic at times. Overall, I think The Substance is a strong outing, especially with our two lead actresses, Demi and Margaret Qualley. I've seen Margaret Qualley a lot this year. I've seen Margaret Qualley without a lot of clothes this year. My goodness, girl, I'm feeling like your BFF at the end of the day. But yeah, this movie really spoke to me. It's what I like in a horror film. It's gross, it's weird, it's sexy, it's disgusting. Those are words I love together. I love sexy and disgusting together. It is so fun. It's a little bit of the Portrait of Dorian Gray. We'll talk about the plot in a second, right after this. But overall, I have to say, I think this movie is well worth the watch. I would love horror fans to go experience this and prepare for that final act. I might have a whole section dedicated to that final act because, wow, what a moment for horror that we got. I don't honestly, Terrifier 3 has some competition. I don't think it will have the buckets of blood that the end of this movie conjured up. The film opens up with actress Elizabeth Sparkle. She is played by Demi and she's trying to find what to do with her career. She's aging out of her role, and we have Dennis Quaid as this executive for a TV station saying, "You are out. We need fresh blood." This causes this woman to just experience such an honestly, experience I think we all feel at times. Male, woman, celebrity, not celebrity. What to do with our body, how to handle aging, how to handle what society expects. Well, a offer comes to her. It is called The Substance. It comes with a great set of rules. That's one thing I will compliment the movie on. It establishes the rules and it follows the rules. It's not a hard thing to ask, but some movies struggle with that. So she gets the substance, she has to take it, and the substance basically makes a new version of her, a younger version of her, that they seem to be one and the same, though their intentions are vastly different. That's some of the story stuff that gets a little bit weird, is why they are so different even though they are from one of the same. That's especially with the creepy voice over the phone, that's all we get to see from the company. I do love that we don't spend time discussing the owner of the company. What is the substance? I don't need that. Give me this this focused story, and that's what this definitely does. I appreciate that the story is what it needs to be. This woman trying to figure out what to do with her aging body, but then she has this younger body, and what happens when you might want to stay young and fresh? Do you want to give the old body a go still, or do you want to live this life? That's the question this movie presents. And then it just gets crazier and crazier. I'm in this weird spot with this review where I want to get into spoilers, but if you haven't seen this movie, if you're trying to maybe delve into it, I want to keep it fresh for you. But overall, I love the dichotomy of these women. They are feuding in so many ways, but almost don't spend any time with each other. It's intense, and we're seeing the new girl, Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, try to figure out this life, try to figure out how to make herself the one, and she is the one. She becomes the one in the industry. She's building up to this big New Year's Eve celebration, and can she make it? Will she make it? Well, I think Elizabeth has some things to say about that. That's what's really interesting about the film. It's the relationship between the two women. I know the movie is talking about misogyny. It's talking about body issues. It's talking about how women specifically are faced with a certain type of criteria to look a certain way, to be in this industry, to honestly live in the world. It's talking about that, especially from men, but there's this weird dueling battle between the women, and sometimes I think this movie really focused specifically on internalized misogyny, our internalized body issues, and how we confront them. And I think that's where this movie really shines. I think the story and the thesis statement of this is amazing. It's strong, it's compelling. It really makes this worth the watch, truly. And then you cannot talk about this movie without that third act. My goodness, you think what's going on is banana cuckoo pants crazy, and then by the end of this movie, I'm getting a little bit of Tusk from Kevin Smith. I'm getting, I don't know, like Frankenhooker. I'm getting Basket Case. I'm getting Society. You know, that movie with the shunting. I'm getting a lot. It really, it just drives you to a point where I don't think everyone's gonna like this ending. I think it's spectacular. I think a lot of gory, obscure, crazy horror fans are really eating this up, but I can see where like art house people, because this movie is definitely art house. The editing, we'll talk about the editing, the feel, the vibe, the cinematography. It's like weird perspectives. I'm not a lens person, but sometimes I'm like, I am all up in someone's face, and like I'm in a Hype Williams video in 1998. What is going on here? Yeah, I love the vibe of this, but man, this third act will take you one way or the other. Either you like this third act or you don't like this third act. I fall into the camp that loves it, that thinks it's crazy, but to lead into my next thing, we'll talk about in a second, some few tweaks along the way could have made this ending even better. While I overall have massive praise for the substance, I think one of the biggest issues I have is this movie needed some either red penning in the script or it needed some trimming in the editing. I believe it is about 20 minutes too long. You'll hear me say that on a lot of reviews. I think some movies are far too long and all of them could be shorter. What happened to like a 90-minute movie? And that's something I think like David Cronenberg or Brian Yuzna film, or, you know, what's Screaming Mad George, if you think it's about some of those weird kind of gross movies that we got that were body horrors in the late 80s and early 90s, leading up to some of the crazy stuff that we got in the 2000s. Hell, even Splice. This has a little bit of Splice in it. Those movies don't feel too long. They don't overstay their welcome. This movie definitely overstays its welcome, especially with its frenetic editing. This movie is like the Lady Gaga telephone video, that movie Spun. You know those weird kind of edits where you're like, calm down, Requiem for a Dream, but Requiem for a Dream is like a weird kind of stylistic editing, but it's only through certain parts. That's what this whole movie feels like. The whole movie is like, you know that one scene in Evil Dead where Ash is like building the chainsaw thing and it's like that typical Sam Raimi shot? The whole movie is almost shot like that and edited like that, where sometimes I'm like, chill, crackhead editors, come on, let me breathe, let me figure out what I am doing and adjust to a thing. But it's a stylistic choice. I will say they made a choice. Movies these days aren't making choices. I love it. Like, this kind of, in a way, they're not plot-wise or anything similar, but I really love the choices between this and Long Legs this year, of making a art house-inspired film that is bougie, is pretentious, but isn't afraid to get a little wackadoo, sleazy, and weird. We need those mixtures, this weird balance, and I do think the substance balances that well. I just think, again, I could have enjoyed the journey if things were a little bit tighter. Things get repetitive. You know, again, we set up the rules, we follow the rules, but I'm like, can I have a little bit more conflict? Maybe a couple more shocking moments leading up to the big, ending. I don't know. There's just something along the way that I don't want to say I was bored. That's not the correct thing. That's a little bit mean to say, but I just felt my thoughts like waning a little bit, as instead of being intensely focused, a little bit tighter along the way. It could have been great, but look, the acting's fine. The cinematography's bold, and again, another bold choice. Not always my favorite. Sometimes my favorite. I did not need to be in Dennis Quaid's face eating some shrimp like that. Ugh. Ugh. Anyways, but overall, look, I like this movie. There's not much to really hate on, but I do think this movie is so close to like a 5-star masterpiece, but just something kept me, like it was just out of reach from being there. But overall, look, it's the substance. It's a badass movie that I advise any horror fan to dive into ASAP. That is it for my feelings on The Substance. Check it out if you can. It is in theaters. It will soon be released online somewhere. It's released by Mubi, which is a streaming service that I usually know about. Now a distributor. Mubi, eat y'all's. Like, get it, girl. Eat it up. I'm happy for y'all. But anyways, I hope y'all get to see this because I definitely think it's worth the viewing. What did y'all think of the film? What did you guys think of my review? Share your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to Flickering Myth, especially if you're a horror fan. We are always doing the horror goodies, not just for the spooky season. We're not one of those people. We are spooky year-round. Join us over here. Thank you guys so much. Comment, subscribe, thumbs up, all that jazz. And let's talk about The Substance right down below.